Hello and welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America. My name is Brian Perez, and we are here on this 10/24/24. Yeah, the 24th of October, ready to answer your questions at 888-564-6173. We would love to hear from you, so grab an open line while you still can, 888-564-6173. If you've called us earlier this week and haven't been able to get through, try again today. We're here till 4 at 888-564-6173, the same number you see on the screen if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. And if you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you can send in your question on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook Messenger, or by DMing us on Instagram, or by going to our flagship radio station's website, kwave.com, and filling out the form on the Pastor's Perspective page. And we'll get those questions tomorrow morning, more than likely. But the best way to get an answer today is by calling us while we're here live. 888-564-6173. Much better chance of getting an answer to your question when you call. If you do send it in online, so many other questions come in online, we may not get to yours. So the best thing to do is to call us when we're here, 888-564-6173. Answering your questions today, we've got Dr. Bobby Conway, the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, author of the book, Does Christianity Still Make Sense? And you can hear him here on the radio, on our flagship radio station's schedule. He's on Saturdays and Sundays with his program called Christianity Still Makes Sense. Phil Metzger joins us too. He's the pastor of Calvary San Diego in San Diego, I think, right? And they're both here, ready to talk to you at 888-564-6173. Welcome, gentlemen. What's going on?
Hey, guys. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, hey, good to be with you.
Great. So, again, the number, 888-564-6173. And here's a question that was sent in online. It's from Sam, who writes, "Hey, pastors, I've been having trouble stepping into the role of spiritual leader for my family. I have a wife and a young daughter, 3 years old. I've been a follower of Jesus for 8 years now, but didn't have a good example of a spiritual leader growing up. Any advice would be appreciated." Bobby, we'll start with you. What would you say to Sam?
Yeah, I think when it comes to, our role as a spiritual leader, it's not always as cut and dry as some people would like to think of what it looks like for a person to, lead a follower. And so some of the things I would say is it's important as a spiritual leader that we're cultivating our own individual spiritual life with the Lord. And so we're experiencing sanctification, because that's the leading by example piece. I would say we want to model before our family that kind of a life where we're seeking to listen to the Lord on the direction of the household, on the daily decisions. And then I would say, as it relates to like a parent's role, the Shema talks about, what it looks like in Deuteronomy 6, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And it talks about how we should teach our children. And so I'd say read Deuteronomy 6, and when you lie down, when you walk by the way. And I really think that discipleship is a ongoing conversation. It's not just a moment. While you might have moments, what happens is we're teaching our kids, for example, how to think Christianly in all arenas of life. And so, for example, I've shared at different times, I taught my kids how to watch film and how to pay attention to the news. And that kind of stuff is really important. So you go to a movie with your kids and it's age-based appropriate, right? But then you're teaching them to go in with, I want you to look for the protagonist and the antagonist and the foil and understand what the plot is. I want you to be thinking in terms of, where does this film align with the Christian worldview that we share? Where does it differ? And then what was the main point of this message? Can this message of this movie be used in an illustration anywhere in your life that you could tuck it away? When it comes to music, sometimes you could print off some of the kids' favorite songs and say, now let's read these lyrics. And so let's consider the message of the song. Is this the kind of message that you want to live? If not, why listen to it? Is it simply because it sounds good? We don't do things simply because it feels good, but why let our senses be that way. Well, I like the way it sounds, but I'm listening attentively so that I can understand the worldview of it. And so what's really cool about worldview thinking is you don't have to be a separatist. You can engage the world and you can listen to music, you can watch films, but you're thinking Christianly and you're using the Bible as the measure for how to discern, and that can be helpful. I think practically speaking, it's also engaging the kids and the family. And it could be, a simple prayer at mealtime. It could be a family gathering once a week on a family night where there's maybe a little devotional read. It could be praying with your wife before you go to sleep if you go to bed at the same time. Sometimes life gets really busy. Like my wife and I were really consistent praying every day together when we were younger. Then we had kids and we lost the habit. And it's like right now we're trying to, get it back, but we went up to the mountains for a couple of days and we were sitting by a lake and I just took some time to pray with my wife. We go for prayer walks together. And I think that there's things like that could be helpful. I'm sure Phil's got some great advice as well.
I think that was so great, man. I'm taking notes, Bobby. That was great stuff. I especially, and I kind of want to piggyback onto something, and maybe then add a couple other thoughts. But I think it's so important that, like, when we talk about spiritual leadership, we learn, like, what kind of a person am I in that process? In other words, I'm not a replacement to other people. Like I got to be me. So like, how could I engage my family? Like the whole point, and I think I love what Bobby's saying, is about an integration, a holistic Christian life. That is, it's not just like spiritual leadership that happens separate from the world that we already live in. So like, what does it look like to be a Christian in our school, in our home, in our neighborhood? Yeah, you're going to go over to your friend's house. Well, what does that look like? What would that look like? Does your faith only work when you go to church on Sundays? Something's wrong if that's the only place you can, quote unquote, be Christian. Consistency is such a big part of leadership. When I learned that, like, my kids are watching me 24/7, not just at church, but they're watching me 24/7. So I want to be consistent. I would add, and again, it depends on how old this guy's, Sam's kids are. And this is true for everybody. As your kids get older, you want to be able to have honest conversations with your kids where you're not just telling them things to do or to be, but you're conversing. There's conversation, there's learning. I think the best leaders, and again, when we talk about leadership, there's so many different models of what is leadership. Let's be really clear that the Bible really emphasizes one form of leadership above all. That's servant leadership. That is, that we come underneath and serve underneath. So spiritual leadership is not, I'm going to sit down with you and teach you something, in as much as it is, I'm going to come underneath and support you through life in faith, in the things of God. So servant leadership is a real critical element of home leadership. That's not just something that we should be learning either in business or in nonprofit ministry or whatnot, but we need to learn this in our homes, that we are called by God to be servant leaders. So dads need to be serving their family, not just calling them to a devotion time or calling them to this or dictating or directing. Again, I'm being extreme, but that we would show our kids, what does it really look like to be a servant? And I would add to that a part of, like, I think what Bobby's sharing, in this idea of holistic homes where every part of our lives really make a difference. I would suggest too that I found that my honesty, my authenticity, as my kids get older, I'm like, you know what? I messed that up. I thought I was doing the right thing and I was actually doing the wrong thing. And I need to apologize to you. I think that there's something innate in leadership that makes us think, and it's wrong, it's fleshly. That's like, I can't be honest and real because I'm the leader. And there's no more important place than at home to be honest people. Like, I failed here. I could have and I should have done better. And I apologize. I tell you, I've gotten more equity with my kids when I've been honest like that as they get older than me just saying, well, I'm the dad and that's the way it is. That's not servant leadership. And my kids need to learn from me, what does it look like to be wrong? And then to move forward in a healthy way of repentance, forgiveness, honesty, and so on.
Bobby Conway?
Yeah, and I think when I look back of something as a dad that I think really impacted my kids, and it took me a long time to do it, years, because I was working slowly on the project. But for each of the kids, so for my daughter and my son, I had special trips at certain ages, kind of milestone trips. Like for my daughter, for example, when she turned 16, we were living in North Carolina, and I took her to Disneyland. And, my daughter, if you met her, I mean, she's literally the most joyful human that I've ever met. And I raised her. She is just a joyful doll of a girl. And at 16, she wanted to go to Disneyland, but the innocence that she had was just precious. She wanted to go around with her autograph book and have the different princesses sign her book. And so it was so cute to me. And I asked her, I says, okay, if Daddy holds your hand, and she still calls me Daddy to this day, which I love. And she said, sure. And that was the last time that we kind of would walk in public and just walk around holding hands, because, she didn't want it to look like, she's walking with, an old boyfriend or something. Like, man, maybe she's dating a guy that's a little, I wasn't as gray then. So we walked around, held hands. I got myself some Mickey ears and just looked goofy. And when she turned 16, I presented her a Bible. And I read through the entire Bible, and I prayed over every single page, and I wrote her pages. I wrote prayers out on every page, and I wrote her commentary and life wisdom, and did that for her. And my son, I took him on a little short cruise to the Bahamas, and we had father-son time, and we just played video games and hung out. And ate fries late at night, and ate fries later at night, and ate more fries. But it was good. And I gave him a Bible as well. And then I did a journal for them where I would try to write them wisdom for life. And because I wanted them to have something tangible to pass on. And so I would say, like, even right now, like, my grandkids are going to be born next month, and I want to be able to leave a legacy. So I've already begun praying for their future spouses, or I've already been praying for their salvation, and they're not even out of the womb. I don't think I'm going to do the whole Bible, but I want to be able to read and pray through the New Testament for them and give them each a New Testament with G-Pause notes. So those are the kind of things that just being proactive, coming up with things that they can have in their hand that you could give them that they'll always have, I think can be meaningful as well.
That is so good. Sam, thank you for sending in your question using the form on kwave.com. Going to go to the phones in just a little bit. 888-564-6173 is how you can ask your question of Bobby Conway and Phil Metzger. 888-564-6173. Quickly, here's another one that was sent in online. It is from Ashu, who asks, is astral projection safe? So Phil Metzger, first of all, what is astral projection for those who don't know?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I have no idea.
How about you, Bobby Conway?
Bobby, any what is astral? Well, I mean, I've heard the phrase. Go ahead, Bobby. You're smart. You know this stuff.
Yeah, well, no. It's basically just eliminating your consciousness from your body. So you're projecting your your consciousness, your soul out of body, and kind of having this out of body experience. And I don't see there being any reason to do that. God gave me a body to house my soul, and my consciousness exists within my body. So, and to try to get my consciousness outside of my body would be to try to place my consciousness in a place outside of where God existed, created it to exist. And so I would just say that is more of a new age idea. And I don't think that is something that we should be doing. And not only that, we can't get our consciousness outside of our body. Mm-hmm. We can have the illusion that we did, but our consciousness is contained within our body. So that's the problem as well. It's an effort that won't be truly accomplished, whether we think it was or not.
Now, I wonder why someone might even think that this might be okay. Phil Metzger, do you see any benefits or something that somebody might think, oh, well, if I do that, this might happen. But yet, as Christians, we should stay far away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point there, Brian. When you add in this Christian ethos, like a truly like transformed person, now our consciousness, our being is connected to the eternal God. So like, I mean, I don't see any place where this idea of, and I was looking it up, letting Bobby talk a few minutes, and I just did a quick little search on that, and his answer was way better, by the way, than the one that I read. That this idea of like separating your consciousness and all, it's why would I want to do that? That's a very question, Brian, that you're asking. And as a Christian, there is no like value to that. Now, why is that even coming up? My guess is somebody's looking up like maybe not just even New Age, but like just looking at like worldly ideas about the universe and so on and so forth. I get it. I get that those things happen. I don't want to paint this picture to this person asking like, how dare you? Don't even think about it. It's evil. It's wrong. It's just, as a Christian, it's an unnecessary thing. I'm already connected outside of my own realm. Let's just put this into the terms that make it astral, right? I'm already I am in relationship with a God who dwells in eternity. I already am projected outside of time. I exist in the presence of God, past, present, and future. I have being with God for all of eternity. And so as a person made in the image of God, as a person who's been born again by the blood of Jesus Christ, astral projection, I can't do that on my own, but I am connected to a God who is outside of time.
Bobby?
Yeah, well said, Phil. And the other danger, I mean, astral projection, I mean, the idea that, the intrigue of being able to travel astrally, like through the stars, all you're going to do is potentially create, when you come back from your so-called experience, is material that's just going to confuse the World Wide Web, because we're going to start saying, oh, this is what's going on in the outer space and all of that. And so I would, instead of astral travel in a world with NASA, I would much rather be able to trust the evidence of those who have physically traveled to the astral world and been able to look at things that are out there or in the astral universe and tell us what's out there, versus somebody's asking me to trust their experience of what's going on out there, because that's, again, it's just going to get into some goofy stuff.
For sure. Ashu, thank you for sending in your question on Facebook. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We are 1 week away from October 31st, Halloween, and Diana is calling in from Torrance with a question on that subject. Go ahead, Diana.
Hi, good afternoon. It's me, Diana from Calvary Life. You guys are going to be at our event.
That's right. That's right. Our flagship radio station, K-Wave, is going to take the crew down there. We will be there on October 31st. So, Diana, would love to meet you. If I wind up going, I don't know yet. I'm still thinking about it.
Do you have any tote bags?
Any what?
Tote bags.
Bags?
Like a tote bag.
Oh, tote bags. Yeah, we can bring some of those for sure.
Yeah, and stickers.
We'll bring those too.
Okay. So my question is, my son wants to celebrate his friend's birthday at Knox Dairy Farm. He wants to go on Saturday, and I'm going to be escorting him, but I feel guilty and I feel scared because I don't like scary movies, and I don't like anything scary, and I don't want to participate in anything that seems too real.
Right.
So, I feel kind of guilty, but then I want him to experience it, and and he knows who God is, and I'm going to bring my Calvary Life T-shirt.
There you go.
My Harvest T-shirt.
How old is your son again? What did you say?
Verse on the back. He's 14.
14, so his friend is having his birthday there. And first of all, Bobby or Phil, have either of you been to Knott's Scary Farm out here in California? Did you guys ever do that?
I might have when I was a kid. I just can't remember.
Okay.
Been to
Oh,
Knott's
you'd
Berry
remember.
Farm several
You'd
times.
remember, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I have not done it personally. It's just not my thing. But what do you think about going to these amusement parks or even, haunted houses at, different places around town that might do this kind of thing? What do you think, Bobby?
Well, personally, I don't get too wound up like that because I love the feeling of thrill like that. There is a point where it can just get over the top, and so there could be an inconsistency, right? Like if you have the value that my kids can participate in Halloween, but I don't want them to dress up like anything that's evil. But then we're okay going to Knott's Scary Farm, and I probably would have fell into that inconsistency, but not for taking my kids there, depending upon their age. But if my kids were 13, 14, 15, to me, some kids are influenced in a weird way through some of this stuff. And I think it's having a sense of, your kids' wiring and maturity. Some people just kind of want to go dark. So take, for example, my wife and I just got away for the weekend. My favorite movies are suspense thrillers. And so she gets a little bit nervous with it. She likes, the rom-com stuff. There's certain rom-com movies that make me feel very uncomfortable. Like, this just feels shallow. I don't feel like this is good. There's other ones that I've enjoyed. There's certain forms of suspense thriller, if it shifts into just Freddy Krueger, Michael, Jason, where it's just hacking people up to hack people up. But then there's movies like The Sixth Sense that just is eerie, but the plot is just very intriguing. So she let me pick two movies, and so she had never seen The Shining, and I said my dad took me to see that when it came out in 1980, and I was 7.
Oh my!
So my dad knows what made his son so jacked up, right? But at this age, I watch it and I go, my goodness, that was quite the movie. But compared to a lot of these things that are out there, it's just I love watching The Shining. Now, does that mean that I love the message of it? No, but there's some interesting stuff as it relates to ESP. A person that gets shut down and starts losing his head while he's just quarantined up at the winter, resort. I think that for me, I don't walk away and go, man, I really want to take my family on vacation and just lose my head. So I just appreciate just the mind of a Stephen King and seeing it put his book to film. Or we watched Psycho the next night. You watch Psycho today and you go, there's so many things just on Netflix that would be so much, like you go, how is this even scary? Like you watch Psycho and you go, what? Like my mom says that this was scary. The lady who acted in it would never take a shower again. And I'm thinking, this is nothing. And then I told Heather, I go, maybe that's a sign of just my own corruption. That Psycho didn't seem bad, but I liked watching Norman Bates. There's psychological stuff about a man with the overly bonded with mother wound. So there's interesting things about, split personality. So I can get into the psychology of that. So all that to say, know your kids, know what they can handle, but then even keep that worldview thing going. Like what kind of messages we're coming across? Was it just a celebration of evil for the sake of evil? Or was it just kind of having fun and people dressing up? What did it make you want to do? Does it make you want to go dark? I think those questions are fair, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's wrong for us to be excited and feel suspense, as long as we don't want to see it materialize. And there are places where we get too gory and go over the top, and we need to be aware of that as well.
Phil Metzger.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the fact that your son is like, hey, Mom, take me to Knott's Scary Farm, that adds a lot of he's good with you being there. I know he's only 14, but there's a lot of 14-year-olds that don't want to be with their parents at that time. So the fact that he wants you around is pretty cool. Yeah, my brother just had this situation where his 17-year-old daughter wanted him to take him to like a Universal Studios scary thing or whatever. And all of my siblings, including myself, we're just averse. I don't like being scared. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think horror is bad. I love how Bobby can analyze Psycho the way he just did. and I would even say, like, it would be wrong for me to pass on just because I don't like it. Doesn't make it, it's not a moral, like, right or wrong. It's just, I just don't like that. I don't think it's evil or bad. I think, like, that's a really good, it's a good place. Your son wants to be with you. Connect all of it into, like, again, you don't even have to be like weird, like, well, we believe in God, we don't believe in this. It's like, well, all of it's fake. It's all fake. Of course you don't believe in this. This is just meant to give you jump feels. That's what the point of it. It's still entertainment. And if you can, help your son process that it's entertainment, it's not, this is not real life. I think the idea of just being scared for the fun of being scared and then going on a ride. I mean, let's be real. Roller coasters can be scary for people. I love a good roller coaster, but that can create terror. What's the difference between that and some stupid clown jumping out at you? And I think you could just have fun. I wouldn't feel guilty. I wouldn't feel like you have to walk around with your Bible or anything of that nature. I think you could just have a good time and connect this to a relationship building with your son.
I was going to say, should she stop by the Catholic Church on the way to Knott's and get a vial of holy water and maybe sprinkle it at the clowns and the whatever jumps out at her? I don't know.
I would be doing that because I'd be scared. I went through a scary thing one time, and I was just pushing little kids into the scary parts just so I could get out of there. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I in this right now? But, there is something about that. It's a fun feeling to be like, ooh, I just got scared. I totally I get it. It's kind of fun. I just decided that I will hurt somebody in the process. I shouldn't go into those places.
Bobby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think about it. Even there is something inside of us that there's safe and fun, scary, right? So, I mean, all of us as parents know what it's like to have kids that want to play hide and seek, and they want you to jump out of a closet and scare them. Okay, so you're jumping out of a closet with a mask on and scaring them as mom and dad. Okay, so I mean, it's not there's just different levels, right? I mean, you're always going to have bad apples. Like, some kids can't play video games without going dark. I mean, when I watch certain movies, like certain dramas where people are just so mean to people, I feel that, and it really hurts. Why are people so mean? It doesn't make me want to go be mean, but some people see that stuff, and so that's where the wisdom is. Like, I think it would be pretty cool, like, to go to Salem, Massachusetts, and do one of those, witch walks or whatever that they have that are out there. And
Bobby, I did it. I did it.
You did? What was it like?
I did it. You might be disappointed if you really like that scary thing. We were with our daughter. We just thought it'd be fun. And it was a little bit hokey, if I'm real. I'll be honest. It was a little hokey, but you'd be proud of me. I did it.
I'd be proud. Like, even, see, Phil, like, I love, like, crazy roller coasters. I like when they take you as high as it'll go and just drop you dead air. My favorite, what's funny, like, my favorite at Disneyland is the haunted house. I would go on that over and over and over again, or the House of Terror at Disney World with Aerosmith. I just thought that was fun, and there would be, like, this Alfred Hitchcock story in the background. I used to love the Twilight Zone, stuff like that. So some people don't like that, but so, for example, at night, my wife, she likes to go back and watch reality TV. And for the longest time, we would go back and forth, and I would just say, this is so ungodly, it's cheap, you don't have to think. She says, Bobby, at night, before I go to bed, she says, I'm not wired, like, I don't want to think. I just want to check out, and I don't know what it is, just watching people's lives and the drama. She says, I just get connected with it. And for me, if I just sat and watched reality TV, I'd feel like I'm not exercising my brain. So, I would rather put on Inception before I go to bed and think about, the whole idea of what it looks like to to move through time and then to come back if you've been in another place and then go, okay, you're this much older, you're this much younger, or whatever it was. Christopher Nolan, like, I like the mind tweaks that he gives. We all are different, and that's what's important.
Diana, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. And yeah, we are a week out from Halloween, so if you've got a question about that or anything else, we're here till 4 p.m. Pacific time on this Thursday, the 24th of October. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We've got Bobby Conway and Phil Metzger answering your questions. 888-564-6173. You can watch us on Facebook and YouTube as well if you'd want to see what we look like. I don't know why. Maybe we should put a mask on right now. No. 888-564-6173. We are back on Pastor's Perspective. I found a disguise of sorts. It says happy birthday on it. It's the only thing I could find. But anyway, we don't really keep a lot of masks and things here at the radio station. I don't know why. Anyway, we are back. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. Program sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America. Brian Perez here, along with Phil Metzger and Bobby Conway, who stepped out, but he'll be back in a little bit. 888-564-6173. Maybe he went to find his mask. I don't know. 888-564-6173. Speaking of, right before the break, we were talking about Halloween, and we had a question about astral projection and whether it's okay to go to these amusement parks that have the scary themes. But we often get the question around this time of year, is it okay for Christians to celebrate Halloween? So let's take a different approach. Let's just say this program was called Atheist's Perspective, okay? And this is something that I saw on a friend of mine's Facebook page earlier, so it got me thinking. So she shared somebody else's post. I don't celebrate Halloween for the same reason witches don't celebrate the resurrection. So if this program was called Atheist's Perspective, would a witch call us and say, hey, is it okay if I celebrate Easter? And reason I bring that up is because we've often said here on the program, yeah, it's okay. Again, you can do it, just, it's up to you, your conviction, etc. But based on these words that I just said, would that change your opinion at all? Bobby, start with you.
Well, there's a difference between the commercial aspect of the holidays like Christmas and Easter and Halloween and the ceremonial aspect. or the religious aspect. So, for example, I don't mind that families that are non-Christians have an Easter Sunday celebration, but their idea of Easter is the Easter bunny, and they give their kids baskets. I wish that they understood the true meaning of Easter, but I'm glad that they're having some family time. I'm glad that they're getting together. I'm glad that they're forming a tradition, because we know it's just all fun anyway. And so Santa Claus, for example, I don't mind, non-Christians doing that, though I know what it really represents, and I wish that they understood that as well. So you have a commercialized aspect where you have Santa Claus, you have the Easter Bunny, and then you have this trick-or-treating idea. But then you have the light in the dark. You have the light of Christmas, and you have the light of Easter, and then you have the darkness of what can go down with some people that really take things to heart there. And so, you would have people that can separate that, and then you have Christians that will partake in basically Santa Claus, Easter, and then recognizing the real meaning, and then you have some that won't do it. So it gets mixed up. But I think that those that are out there as Christians, if they're opening a door and they're giving kids candy, I mean, they're just being hospitable, and kids are going to knock on the door anyway. Why be the person with the lights out? You just give the kids a piece of candy and say hello, meet your neighbors, say hi. I don't think that's a big deal. But if someone does think it's a big deal, that's fine. But they typically think it's a big deal because they're thinking about the ceremonies or the rituals that are going on with those that would be involved in the occult, and that's obviously problematic. And so therefore you could do both, and you could pray on Halloween with your family that God would protect those that might be a part of some kind of a sacrifice of animals, and they're a part of the cult, and they're buying into this. They're into like believing that, because basically what those that ascribe to it believe in is in Samhain, and it's this idea that one day of the year the dead spirits can kind of penetrate the physical realm from the unseen realm, and they can show up and do different things. And I mean, that's obviously goofy, but if people start buying into some of this stuff, then that's obviously problematic.
Phil Metzger?
Yeah, that's great. And I think I'd even extend this idea of like commercial and then religious. And I would even say too, there's a cultural, which is ultimately what we're talking about. There's a really famous, not that long ago, really recently, famous atheist, Richard Dawkins, who made the statement, "I am a cultural Christian." I mean, he referred to himself as a cultural Christian. Here's a person who does not believe in God, but loves the traditions that come around, to the point that Bobby was making there. He loves the cathedrals. He would hate to see that part of his history, in the UK where he's from. He'd hate to see that go away. So those are his words. Oh, I love he says, I love Easter, and I love the foods we eat and the celebration. Of course, it's non-religious at all. So I would suggest that it's kind of like there's a double-edged sword to this. There's a moment where, as Christians, we can be fighting against something that is more cultural for people than actually religious. And we end up kind of, as Bobby said, light darkening our windows and turning off our lights for Halloween. But we're against this kind of a thing, but gosh, but we'll eat the candy. If there's candy around, we'll have some. It's a bit of a like, gosh, what you're saying you're against one thing, but it's Christianity and the culture of passing around a bunch of candy. Those two are not connected. It's not a yin yang light dark issue right there. Kids dressing up as a superhero, collecting candy. Like if you were to say to Martin Luther, "What's Halloween?" He wouldn't connect it to a bunch of kids going around the house going in the neighborhood passing out candy. This is a new idea that we've created mainly in the Western world. This is what we do. It's purely cultural. It's not connected to anything. And of course, as Bobby said, there's a real deep evil and darkness, but this to almost every day and every situation. So I think on the other hand, we're against Christmas trees and we're against these kinds of things. we don't need to be against things that are not connected to our faith at all. Christmas trees, you don't have to worry about that. Santa Claus, you don't have to worry about that. Easter bunnies, you don't have to be the person that when they say happy holidays, you say it is Merry Christmas and you will like it and you will love it. These are cultural things. Now, as a Christian, I want to puncture into culture with the gospel of Jesus Christ. I don't need to be, and this is my kind of missional approach to life, I don't need to stand against the culture. I need to push into that and to show that, hey, you've got these things. That's all cute. That's all great. But Easter bunny is all great, but let me tell you what it's really about. Now, if I immediately begin with, I'm against the bunny, but here's Jesus, I might have already lost people. How dare you have an Easter egg hunt? This is all about Jesus. It's like, dude, the kids just wanted to go collect a bunch of plastic eggs and get candy. They weren't doing this in opposition to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It had nothing to do with that. We got to keep that in mind and not be offended by things that are not offendable or offensive.
Puncture into culture. I love that, Phil. That was pretty cool. Bobby Conway?
Yeah, that's a good word. You know, the even like opportunities, if we're aware, like, so for example, like the eggs, I mean, that you know, represents like the coming out of the tomb, right? Like a treat inside the egg. There's Jesus, and you have, an empty, you have treats inside the eggs, but then you have an empty egg. You open, oh wow, where is he? It's a teaching. Martin Luther, speaking of him, I mean, he's the one known for decorating the Christmas tree with apples and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. Martin Luther was a 16th century reformer, and really October 31st, 1517 is the birth of the Reformation. And so some Christians celebrate Reformation Day. So if you really want to go all out, you can go get one of those haircuts like Martin Luther when he was an Augustinian monk, and you could, and basically they had the bald spot in the back of their head with a hair around it, and that was just symbolic of the crown of thorns. They were identifying with Jesus, so you could shave that part of your head off and you can pretend that you're an Augustinian monk, but then you can experience Reformation and allow your hair to grow back from that point forward, right? You could decorate your front door like the Castle Church at Wittenberg in Germany, where he hung up his 95 Thesis, and you could stand out there in your garb and you could pass out things. And it's so funny the way cultural things are too. You take like a Martin Luther. People love him, but he did a thing called table talk. And the way that he disciples his burgeoning, growing theologians is they would come over to his house, and his wife, who was once a nun, Katharina von Bora, she had a brewery, and she'd make beer for Martin Luther, and they would enjoy pints of beer over theological discussions. Some people would have a heart attack at that thought, but good things came out of that. So all that to say, some of these things, this is where I do, sometimes I realize how much we're caught in the coat of our own customs. And sometimes we need to unzip that jacket and step out and try some other wear on. And what you realize is when you take a journey through history is you start seeing some of the variances of the different traditions. And it gets us outside of ourselves because we get pretty laced up in our straitjacket and think that our own myopic worldview is the only way to see things. And that can be dangerous.
Phil Metzger.
And to that too, like, tradition as well. It's not just culture, but even just tradition. Tradition becomes a weight. It's supposed to give us freedom to enjoy, but it can really become a weight. And I was thinking, you think of Luther too. You think of, here's a guy who, these Lutheran hymns that came out that are just, now they're old and, traditional and all. And they used bar hymns, bar song music to Christian lyrics. If you did that today, people would lose their minds. But of course, we just forget what might be a great Lutheran hymn today was 400 years, 500 years ago, 600 years ago, a bar song, and just changed to be Christian. Tradition is something that you want to encourage. I think it's like, I think Bobby, if those of you listening to the show earlier, Bobby gave some great family traditions of like reading through the scriptures and giving your kids a Bible and going on trips together. These are amazing traditions. They're beautiful, And we want our traditions to bring life and light and hope and encouragement. And we have to be careful that we don't, as a culture, let our traditions become points of bondage and really and anger, and like it's created division and so on. And I'm always on a mission to keep separated our Christianity from American Christian. There is no American Christianity. There's only Christianity. And we have great traditions here that are not, they're neither here nor there. We just have to remember that. Yeah, you go to Europe. We lived most of my life in adult life in Europe. Halloween is a Reform Day. It's Reformation Day. It's the day that Catholics will go to. This is when they're praying to saints, and they're praying to And again, this is not something that we're for. We believe in, but it's not connected to this like evil necessarily. And then you have these other religions, Druids and so on and things like that. That's a animistic or paganistic religion. That's where a lot of that comes from. And we just have to keep those things separate. Love God and pass out some candy. I was going to say, you don't have to dress up like Martin Luther. You could dress up like Norman Bates. You could dress up as Norman Bates and hand out candy.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, just don't dress up like his. Norman Bates dressed up too. He put on his mother's garb. Because he was he was a taxidermist who stuffed animals, but then he basically had his mom just chilling out in the bedroom. Don't do that. But I was laughing because Phil's talking about taking bar tunes, and so yeah, that would be kind of a hard, if you start taking Pitbull or Taylor Swift and doing worship music out of it. You could imagine that, and there is a sense where we want to be tasteful, like as Christians too. I mean, we're talking about things like there is a sacredness that we want to be careful of. There are some principles that we want to make sure that we are tasteful. But I guess what we're just trying to do is say that there's so much that's hard to just apply, just following Jesus, right? Like carrying that cross and being a disciple. If we just take away that everything from kids, like you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't do this. I mean, like I would much rather them learn to not lie and learn to tell the truth. I would to have self-control, to have integrity and virtue, and discernment, and then learning how to have fun and pay attention to their own conscience. There are certain things in my life. There were certain stages in my life where one thing was wrong, but then I matured, and then it didn't feel wrong to me anymore. Like, in other words, like when I was first getting clean and sober, there were certain environments that I felt like I would need to avoid, just because I needed the safeguard of it. But now I feel like there's certain environments that I could enter into if I wanted to, without making it a habit. There were certain things, like as a new believer, I didn't watch anything above a PG movie for 10 years. I was a zealot. I walked out of a movie once because the A word was used and it was a PG movie. And then I got to a point where I realized, wait, I'm letting Hollywood tell me what I can and can't watch. And I was at Dallas Theological Seminary, and the professor showed a clip from The Matrix with Neo and Morpheus, and take the red pill or the blue pill. And, let's see, are you ready to go down the rabbit hole and see where this goes? And, Neo pops the pill, and it was interesting. And I thought, wow, this was a good illustration that I could use, not to teach people about, the Matrix, but you can use an illustration like we're kind of trapped in the Matrix, like people were trapped in Plato's cave. If you've ever read Plato's Republic and about the cave and these people that were chained up in a cave, and if somebody could escape the cave and go back and tell people, no, there's another world out there, they would laugh at them if that's the only world that they knew. But Plato believed in the world of ideas and forms, and there was another world out there. And so there's illustrations you can use from Plato's cave or from the Matrix. And if we see it like that life is an illustration, and sometimes these illustrations, like even the Bible, for example, you could teach your kids on Halloween. You could read some passages if you want to teach them about some of the dark side of things. You could look up stuff about mediums and the Witch of Endor and the occult and soothsayers and astronomy and or astrology. And you could say, let's look at what the Bible had to say about some of this stuff. And isn't this interesting? Where do you see this stuff in our culture today? And they learn to discern. And then you could say, now when we go out, guess what? We don't believe in this stuff like this. We're looking at it from just more of a, let's go meet our neighbors and have some candy.
Good conversation today on Pastor's Perspective. Still time for you to get your question on the program, 888-564-6173. Really quick, earlier today, Diana called in, told us about her church's event at Calvary Life in Gardena. You can find out more about that at calvarylife.com. And Phil Metzger, your church is doing a trunk or treat on the 31st, huh?
Yes, we do it every year. We'll have, 1,500, 2,000 kids come through. It's so fun. We're in such a great little area for our community. We'll have a bunch of cars. And this year we're doing a roller skating. We're adding roller skating. So our new sanctuary is perfect for roller skating. So we are bringing it back, baby. And we're encouraging roller skating. There's going to be food trucks and all that. So you could check it out at Calvary SD. It's from 5 to 9 on Halloween.
Roller skating in the sanctuary?
That's the bomb.
Yes,
I used to feel so cool. Like when I was 7 and 8 and I'd go and they'd have that disco ball, and I'd just be doing, just sliding those legs back and forth as I went around, and they, and they had the music going. I mean, the Bee Gees would be playing, man. And that was the best.
Isn't that so fun, you guys? I mean, there's no roller skating rink in our area. And we're always looking for, again, it's that kind of phrase, puncturing into culture. What are things that we could do that create community, that give opportunity for families and for people to come in? Something that, what age doesn't have a great memory of roller skating? We all do. And we thought, how fun. Yeah. So we're literally turning our sanctuary into a roller skating rink, disco ball and all, my friends. Halloween night, it's happening.
CalvarySD.com's got all the details. All right, back to the phones. Here is Christy in Murrieta. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, Christy.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
Okay, so I have a question. I'll give you a little background. I have horses, and I board my horses at a ranch, and there's a woman there who basically spends probably all her money on a psychic, and she'll come up to me and say, my channel told me that your horse and his, the reason he's having problems is because of his past life or something like that. And I mean, this has gone on for 3 years, and I've told her, I don't believe in that. I said, I believe that those are demons that are talking to your friend, and I don't believe in that. I believe in Jesus, And then, but basically everything that she believes is, antithetical to what I believe, or what I believe Christ, and the Bible says. So I had another guy that, was at the ranch, and he is a Christian, and he changed, did a brake job for her because she's always broke because she spends all her money on the psychic. And so I did tell him, I just want you to know that she spends all her money on a psychic. So every time you do something nice for her, and I'm telling you, I've loaned her money, and I'm like, you're basically supporting her psychic, And but then he said, tell me a verse where God doesn't, where God says we shouldn't do something nice for someone, even though they're not, a Christian or from this world. And I realized, yeah, he's right. And then, so I guess maybe I shouldn't have said anything. I don't know. But I was just kind of warning him that she'll just kind of the way she is. But I don't know, wisdom. I don't know what to tell him, but I guess I should have just minded my own business. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. So we get questions like this sometimes when, should I give money to a homeless person who might just use the money on alcohol or drugs? So in this case, in Christy's case, she's going to give money to this woman she knows who's just going to use it on psychics. Should Christy continue to do something like that, knowing where the money is going? What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Christy. Thanks for calling in on this because, like you said, Brian, that question of do we give to homeless knowing that it might, those are often situations where it's a one-off kind of a moment. This is unique because this is a person you're seeing on a regular basis. So I would maybe not be so hard on yourself in terms of, oh, I should have just kept to myself and not said anything. I might suggest an alternate approach, but I think, Christy, your point is that like, hey, I know this person. This is not a one-off. I didn't just like one time give her, support her and help her, and then she went and did this. But this is an ongoing thing. So I think, being honest and authentic to the fact that like, hey, I know this person and I know what she's doing and where she's going to give it and what it's going to go to. But I think there's something kind of bigger at play here. However the situation is, Christy, God put you in her life. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be like supporting her habits or anything like that. Let's take that out of the equation for a moment and just draw this one really simple conclusion. God has, by his sovereignty, he's put you in her life. And so you can have wisdom and say, no, I don't feel comfortable helping you. I'm sorry that you don't have money right now. I wish I could help you. But you know what? I just disagree on where you put your money. So I'm not going to support you on that. I still want to be your friend. I'm not against you. You might even benefit. I think it's interesting. People that like spend a lot of money in that direction, I'm always curious to ask them like, well, how's that going for you? How is it going? Like, rather than just the approach of like, it's demonic, I'm just really curious, like, how's it going? Is it really you seem to be in the same situation you were a month ago and a year ago and 10 years ago. How is this really like, because in my faith, there's progression that's happening, the work of God in my life. God, he's a living God who's with me and who's present. So I think you have so many contrasts and opportunities for relationship that can be asking good questions, but I would not beat yourself up for telling, listen, if you want to beat yourself up for something, maybe it's this. You don't have to just warn other Christians about this person. It could be a point of prayer. It could be a point of, hey, just know this is a real thing for her in her life. Her bigger problem is not that she's giving money to psychics. It's that she doesn't know Jesus as her savior. And because she doesn't have a relationship with God, she is running in these other directions. Do you understand there's a difference? Her main problem is not the psychics. It's that she has no relationship with Christ that is leading her in that direction. So you have a great place where you can focus your attention in prayer. You can have honest conversations. I think it's very valid to say to somebody, I just don't feel comfortable helping you out in this situation. Doesn't mean I don't want to help you or support you. I don't agree with you, and I can't really help you in that. That's honest.
Bobby, 30 seconds.
Well, as far as the person who says, is there any verse in the Bible that you could show me? I would say, well, yeah, I could show you a lot as it relates to stewardship. We're called to be stewards of God's money, and which means that we're not to put our money into things. He goes, oh, give me another example then. Okay, well, what if you knew the person was going to go to a strip club with the money you gave? Would you give the person the money? So there's boundaries, right? So what I would say is you could always specify where you want that money to be used, or you could just make the purchase for the person so that you know how the money was used, and then therefore you could be a steward.
Christy, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. We're out of time. If we didn't get to your call today, so sorry. We will be here again tomorrow between 3 and 4 p.m. Pacific time. So call us early. We open up the lines about 7 minutes before 3 o'clock. For Bobby Conway and Phil Metzger, I'm Brian Perez. And Pastor's Perspective was sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America.